welcome. I'm grateful to have on Matt Hallmark on this episode. If you are looking for honesty from an experienced sales rep, look no further. This is it. Matt Hallmark does not talk about the glory and how great it is, the glitz and the glam. He's been around the industry for over 20 years, and his main focus is on servitude of the industry. When I say the good, the bad, and the ugly, he is not shy about talking about the bad and the ugly. But as you start to hear his truth, you really understand why it is so great to be a medical device sales rep. I had the pleasure of working with Matt at Stryker Mako when I moved over to Georgia. And I'll tell you firsthand that he's the kind of leader who sets the tone for success. He's not just a manager, he's someone who created a culture of giving and doing the right thing. He leads by example and shows what it means to go above and beyond without even being asked, just doing what's needed. Matt doesn't necessarily see himself as a salesman so much as he sees himself as a servant to his customers and their patients, because that's what they require. And it's that mindset that separates the good from the great. I'm excited to have him on again, but just one-on-one, and for you to hear what he has to say. Enjoy.
So the question is, how often do people reach out to you that are outside of the business looking to get in? And what do they say? How do they approach you typically?
Honestly, it's not as often now as it was probably, I don't know, like 8 or 10 years ago, maybe, for some reason.
Mhm.
I guess I do get approached some via from like LinkedIn on occasion, and I get asked the question to people that I get introduced to that are not in the business, that just are curious about the business. I'll get referrals from people that I know of young people coming out of college, like, hey, they're looking to get into medical sales. Can you have a conversation with them? It's maybe once or twice a month, maybe from that standpoint. There's a lot of
Mhm.
resources that people can sort of dive into now. I think LinkedIn has helped sort of kind of give people the opportunity to see that. And
Yes.
I I kind of have a conversation with them in regards to what they think the business is actually like, I guess you would say. And more oftentimes than not, I kind of give them the raw version of, this is not probably not what you think it actually is. And that's sometimes hard for them to hear the answer, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I guess that, does that answer the question? Yeah,
No, that's a really good point. I mean, you got me thinking back to when I was a rep early on. There certainly was more. There were more people curious about it. There were more people asking about it. Um, and to your point, I think generally there were less options available. Um, and when I say less options, like I don't know if there's exactly less options, but there was a perceived less options. You come out of school and it's like I have to go work for or get a job. You could be an entrepreneur, but that was like almost like an emerging word, so to speak. I remember universities starting to consider having entrepreneurial classes,
yeah,
um, because it became like a trend. But in reality, it's like, all right, well, I have a good degree. How am I going to go use it effectively? And now with the internet, there, like you said, there's options to learn and educate yourself on what's out there. And if you are interested in medical sales, there's platforms and ways you can get educated without just speaking to someone in it.
yeah,
And then, but there's also different things to do and routes to take that people are considering. So I think all these different things bundled together, there's less people reaching out to reps than there were. Because I think it would just happen quite often. Like if anybody found out that I was a rep, they would have questions for me. If they're ready to get in or not, it was different. But people were just like curious and what's going on there. Does that
yeah.
sound right?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think from the technology standpoint, we have so much access at our fingertips of data information that can kind of give you ideas around that, as far as different areas, whether it be, say, ours primarily is orthopedic, right? But if you think about cardiothoracic, if you think about neurology, if you think about general surgery,
Yeah.
there's pharmacology. Like it depends on like what you're really interested in from a standpoint. And there, like, we know that there's different lifestyles for those different types of areas to be in. And I think your personality kind of has to match up appropriately, whether you're willing to be in a specific genre of medicine. Take, for instance, let's say like pharmaceutical sales is way different than being in orthopedic sales rep. Just like night and day different, right?
Yeah.
You probably not in the OR. As a pharmaceutical rep, you're spending more time in the office. You're probably spending more time talking to the surgeons in a clinical setting versus as an orthopedic rep. You might be talking to surgeons in a clinical setting, but a lot of your time is spent in the OR in an actual procedural setting. So there's a big difference there, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
physical difference as well. I mean, trying to move around instrument trays for orthopedics versus, if you're doing, I don't know, like go back to pharmaceuticals, you're probably not moving around large heavy metal trays. You might be moving around, um, your samples of drugs or whatever that you have for the doctors, but moving around
Hmm.
instruments and it's very different, right?
Completely.
So I think I want to get into medical sales. There's like, what? Hold on. Let's start with, well, what kind of lifestyle are you thinking that you want to have in that particularly, and that might actually lead you a different path to different types of medical sales.
Yeah. What's drawing you to it? What's drawing you to ask this question in the first place? Yeah, I'm trying to just imagine it right now. If somebody were to ask us, hey, curious about medical sales, tell me about it. And you're absolutely right. It's what kind of lifestyle do you want? What are you expecting to do? What excites you just about the idea? Like, there's certain questions you want to ask them so you understand who you're dealing with. I remember talking to countless people that were interested in it, whether they were family members or friends or came to me from someone, and I would spend a good 10, at least 10 minutes trying to figure them out so I know who I'm talking to. And my Striker top 5 context is in there, so figuring people out. So maybe that's what it is. But in reality, then I know how to explain to them what it's like. Are they even looking to get into sales? Are they really passionate about marketing, or are they looking to move to a different city? And is it because they injured their ACL in high school, right, and they want to get into it? Or are they passionate about selling? Or they heard you can make a whole bunch of money? Like, what is it that you're interested in?
Yeah, baseline
Right.
motivation. You got to figure
Yeah.
that out first and foremost, I guess, from that standpoint.
Yeah.
For me, I don't think I never really thought about the money side of things. I mean, I knew that medical device sales, you could make money, but I mean, I was really interested in the body and like being able to, I guess, coming from a background of an exercise science background of how the body moved and being able to repair the body. I just really, really enjoyed that from my standpoint and just kind of gravitated towards, man, some of the things that these surgeons are doing is unbelievably awesome that we're helping patients because they can't walk, they have a broken bone, or all of those things. That's
Yeah.
being able to provide help and service in that regards. I remember having one surgeon who told me, and this is kind of a side note, he said, you should go back to medical school. He said, you would be an unbelievable orthopedic surgeon.
Hmm.
And I said, I love orthopedics 100%. But I also said, I said, am I willing or am I motivated enough in the healthcare climate to give up the next 4 to 5 years of my life for medical school,
Yeah.
4 to 5 more years for residency, maybe even another year and a half or maybe 2 years of fellowship. So you're looking at 10 years of my life where I'll probably have a huge amount of debt, then come out to try to practice medicine. And in the climate of litigation, I mean, we're in tort reform, all those things of where now it's very difficult for private practice surgeons to even afford malpractice insurance without being in part of a group, right? Or
Yeah.
hospital employed. And I looked at it from a financial standpoint of, do I want to be in debt and spend the next 10 plus years of my life in schooling and training, whereas I could spend the next 10 or 12 years of my life helping you as a surgeon with having a skill set of trying to be a resource and be beneficial to you and still make a living and still have a good life, what weighing out the cost benefit of that. And so I decided to choose the other path versus going back to medical school. Now sometimes I think back, maybe I should have gone to medical school, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, there is this very different sort of thought process. And man, I don't envy the doctors that are currently working in the climate that we have, from the insurance climate reimbursement. They're fighting more on how do I actually get my patients approved for a procedural case and get the insurance to cover whatever I need them to do in order to actually provide the health care that they want to provide for their patient.
Yes.
It's a very, very difficult climate currently.
That's true. You bring up some really good points. Well, first off, yeah, you can do anything in life, but you can't do everything. So you're stuck with that choice. And it was within a year of being with Smith and Nephew, my first company I was with, trauma rep, and I submitted an application to Rutgers to go and do pre-med
Yeah.
because I was like, you know what? And I think, and I'm listening to you, and I'm like, I can see your motivator. I'm like, what's mine? And mine is, I think I was obsessed with trying to reach my potential because I was an athlete that didn't make it, right? And it's like, okay, got this degree though, and I'm gonna go use it, and that's what excited me about this. I felt out of my place. I felt like imposter syndrome being in the OR like every other rep does. But I felt like here's a place where I'm going to be challenged. I'm definitely doing the right thing because it's helping people and you can make good money, right? And all these things. But I get to see like what I'm worth. Like what can I do? How like this isn't going to come easy, and let's see if I can make it happen. Um, but I'm looking at these doctors in the room, and they're the ones who are running the show. Like they got
Yeah.
doctor in front of their name. That didn't matter that much to me. In fact, it'd be awkward. I feel like if people are like just calling me doctor all the time. But they're the ones where they're in the game, like they're doing it. Like everything's on them. And I'm sure you feel the same way. Some of these doctors you really admire, right? Some of these doctors, I remember feeling like almost like they're like a celebrity. Some of them because of how talented they are and how all the other doctors view them. And you're like, you're in this like mini world in
Mhm.
healthcare, right?
Yeah.
But I think what stopped me was the work-life balance, if you want to call it that a doctor doesn't have because of the system that they're in. Because you would think like any job, generally speaking, at the very beginning of when you start working, it's going to suck and you're going to have very little work-life balance. If this career is worth anything, but then eventually you can free up and you've put in the time and you can work smarter, not harder, and you can spend time with your family, right? You can do all these other things. And now, yeah, all these doctors are making good money and the prestige and stuff, but their work-life balance, I'm not so sure it changes.
I
If
think it
anything, it
actually
gets worse
might get
because they get more
worse.
patients.
That's right. I think you're right, especially with like we talked about. Not there's not many of them that are in solo private practice or even small groups anymore. One, they're in a large group,
Yeah.
which then might or may not be private equity held, where they're just trying to make money from the doctors and asking them to do more and
Right.
more and more and more, or they're a hospital employed surgeon and the hospital wants them to do more and more for their metrics in order for the hospital to make them, essentially a equitable partner in the actual flow of the, whatever the financials of them being an employee of the hospital, where the hospital, now you're beholden to the hospital instead of
Yeah.
you being an actual doctor and providing service. So is there some weird sort of like a route there where are hospitals that are not physicians telling the physicians how they should practice medicine, or is private equity creating this
Yeah.
weird sort of scenario inside large private practices where they're driving these metrics, which is at the end of the day, is it helping provide better or worse care? I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, and
A part of a
I
system.
I did not want to be a cog in that wheel. I'm kind of in a cog in another wheel. Like I'm in the sales cog, right? So,
Yeah.
but I do still have some freedom to move, around inside certain spaces, even though we have non-competes in our space. I'm sure you've experienced that too,
Yeah.
where the companies basically say, "Hey, you can't take your customers," all of those things, and that's a whole nother
Hmm.
conversation we can have if that should be even
It's a really
legal
good
or
point.
not. And there's some laws that are trying to be enabled in order to sort of see whether that should hold water or not. But yeah, I think there's a very, very real sort of scenario on both sides of the picture.
Right. No, it's true though. Like a surgeon has the money to have a nice car, a nice house, and when they do get to go on vacation, it looks great.
Yes.
But then the majority of what they're doing, they're kind of stuck in the cog of that wheel. And I get what you're saying when with sales, yeah, January 1st hits and all the work you did last year, congratulations, or
Yep.
whatever happened last year happened last year. We got a new quota this year. Time to go again. Um, but you can always move within your company if you want to make an adjustment into marketing or climb the corporate ladder, or um, you can make shifts within your organization depending on, the business, the amount of business units it has. Or you can just shift to a whole nother, a completely different company if there's no non-compete, or a different segment of the business, and you're going to be valued. And so there's always the opportunity to make a move if you need to make a change in your life, whether it's location, work-life balance, or just like you lost your drive for something, whatever it is. So there is the opportunity to move around, and I feel like doctors are more locked in
Yeah.
to what they've done, what they've built. And the doctors today, their specialties are like super specialized, right?
Absolutely.
So, that's why, I've heard this a lot of times where people are surprised that doctors don't know a certain aspect when they ask them about health. It's like the perception is wrong. It's not fair to look at the doctor that way. They're not a health guru. They're not a healthcare whiz. They are an orthopedic trained surgeon who specializes in joint and hip replacement. Right. So if you're asking them about the most recent pill or thing for weight loss or whatever it is, and they're not familiar, it's like, oh, how are they treating patients? It's like, do you understand how healthcare works, or just anything really? You know, um,
Yeah, it's
but
specialization, right? I think you're saying, we think sometimes as doctors that they're like, oh, they should know all of these things. Well, they become so specialized in an area
yeah,
where they become experts, where they really need to know all of the things in this particular area. But like you said, you can't take an orthopedic surgeon and be like, oh, can you tell me like what I should do with like these weight loss medications and like am I a candidate and all those things? That's not his or her
right.
specialty, right? You need to go
Hmm.
someone who is educated and up to speed on that, and actually dealing specifically in that particular arena of medicine.
Yeah,
And we've siloed doctors. Now, I guess there are some general, family health doctors out there that probably cover a wide range of those things, but those guys are not, or ladies, physicians, male or female, are not going to be operating on you as an orthopedic surgeon. They're family
yeah,
practice medicine, right?
hmm,
It's a very interesting sort of dynamic. But yes, they're not going to change unless they go back to school for a specific area. Whereas we have the flexibility, which I think is awesome, that you can change into different areas. Like I recently changed from orthopedic joint implants on that side, and now I'm in the sports med space, and a lot of the stuff carries over. All of the stuff that I deal with the OR and all those things, now the procedural stuff, slightly different, and I have to learn and kind of develop what is it like from a sports med space. But a lot of my orthopedic background carries over in that, because there's overlap in that space, right? There are joint surgeons and that do sports med, same thing, right? So it kind of overlaps.
yeah,
You can learn something. You can always learn something new from a sales perspective, and growing a business in medicine. It seems like you can learn something new, but you're probably not going to do a specialty learn, potentially, where you would change from orthopedics to, say, I don't know, general surgery. You're probably not gonna do that.
yeah,
If you
yeah.
could.
A massive move. Yeah. So tell me about that. You made a recent change after spending quite a while in the robotic space, managing the equipment, the clinical
Yeah.
side, also the technical side, managing people, navigating the complexities of the OR, and actually getting the equipment in. You did a lot when it comes to um, moving and utilizing the robots here in the Southeast,
Mhm.
for orthopedics. But now, what space are you in? What company are you working for? What are you selling?
So I work for a startup company called Miak Orthopedics, and then they have a product called the Bear Implant. And the Bear Implant is a biologic scaffold that allows patients to heal their ACL. So instead of them getting a reconstruction, sports med surgeon will repair their ACL and use our biologic scaffold as essentially a blood clot to help heal that tissue and allow the tissue to reinnervate, reheal in the space, versus them having to get a reconstruction where reconstruction you remove the entire ACL remnant that's there and either take a quad tendon, a BTB, which would be your patella tendon, or a hamstring autograft, and create tunnels and build out a new ACL out of that tissue. There's also allograft opportunity too. You could use a cadaver or someone else's tissue that you could use for an ACL reconstruction. Our product allows you to not have to do that if you have good quality tissue that can be repairable, and then add our bare biologic scaffold in order to allow the patient to reheal their ACL. So it's a game changing paradigm shift, and a lot of surgeons we're very early. We are super early as far as from adoption standpoint, but we're developing. We have literature, we have studies that are coming out that are supporting, hey, this can be an option, and it just needs to be, we're still vetting out exactly who are the right candidates, and we're getting additional FDA approvals for partial tears, we've removed the age restrictions so we can use on adolescents, which could be a tremendous game changer. Think about a kid not having to get a reconstruction where they could heal. Kids heal faster
Wow.
than everybody, right?
Right.
But the pediatric surgeons, with good conscience, are very, very cautious in regards to this because it's so early. They are still trying to make a good decision on how is the best way that we go about this. And I
Yeah.
am in that phase of trying to, one, understand their mental processes and also provide them with information for them to make a good decision on the right candidates for this particular procedure. And it's not an end all be all. Some patients are just not candidates. They need reconstructions, but a lot of patients could be potential candidates for repair with the bare and heal their ACL. So there's a lot there to unpack. It's
Yeah.
having those conversations with the surgeons and changing sort of this mindset for the last 40 or 50 years where reconstruction was the only way. And it's similar scenario when I first stepped in with Mako, when robotics hit the market, when I was an early person with Mako, and it was still a startup company early on, and surgeons said, "Oh, robots is never gonna we're never going to use robotics and for total joints. This is like it's not going to stay in the market."
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that there's can be nothing further than from the truth in regards to, once, if you look at history, from my understanding, once robotics enters an industry, it never leaves the industry. It just creates this opportunity for greater precision, for doing a job. The surgeon's still involved, but it allows the surgeon to do a better precision job. And I
Mhm.
feel like this is the next kind of level in where we are going in the evolution. I think biologics is going to be the new, more like frontier
Yeah.
of orthopedics, that we can figure out how do we really heal ourselves using some biological principles and understanding the basic science, and that direction, I believe, is where we can go for the future. And maybe one of these days then it will actually help us prevent patients from having to get some total joints, where they can extend the life of their knees, their hips, whatever the case may be, through biologics. And there are surgeons and there's people that are working on this right now. So, my thought is, in the next 10, 15 years, we're going to have some significant changes in the space
Oh
around
yeah.
biologics for healing of the joint areas. I, there's some surgeons that are really already working on this. I've talked to multiple surgeons. I've seen different products that are out there that are a cutting edge, that are doing some things around the healing process for injuries and total joints,
Yeah.
all of those things. um, I don't have enough expertise to expound upon all of those things, but what I'm seeing and what they're telling me really makes sense. Of like, have we vetted it out completely yet? No, but I think that the opportunity over the next few years of getting to that point of advancement in medicine, we will be able to potentially limit having to get total joints eventually. I'm sure there will be people that need it, but
Right. Right. But
if we
that would
can.
be in a more extreme circumstance, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think we can get to a point where the future will be, hey, you have the opportunity to use your own biology in order to alleviate or elongate before you have to get a total joint.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. I haven't even thought through that concept, but that's something that I firmly believe. And maybe it's because I've been with two companies that are introducing new technologies into the market. And and there's a certain mindset that you have to have when you're approaching the market with something new and you feel like you know something that no one else does. And they're like, here's somebody else with something new, right?
Yeah.
And there's this like clash, and you got to find your customers, and not just customers, find people that are willing to have a conversation with you to even explore the idea. And then, because you can't convince someone like this, or one meeting or two meetings, and you're not trying to convince, you're just trying to educate, right? And like, here's what's going on, here's the technology behind it, and then let them sleep on it and think about the different things that can come from it based on what they heard, right? Because there's a lot of complexities involved, right? If maybe the product's great, but is it going to be at the hospital on time? Does it need to sit in a certain temperature regulated thing? And what's the reality of needing to remove it? There's certain aspects that they need to consider, but it's really, really exciting to be able to provide something that moves the industry forward. And look, if every doctor or customer was ready to try something new, then healthcare would be completely unsafe,
It
because
would be a wild, wild west.
it'd be a wild, wild west, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so you respect that, and I know that you more than anyone else respects a surgeon's opinion, doctor's opinion, right? You're not the guy who walks around drinking your company's Kool-Aid, and it's like whatever my company said is true, and these docs are dumb. Like, that's the rep that's going to be here for 5 minutes and see you later. But there is something. What I wanted to get to was, do you remember the chasm? The
Crossing the chasm.
what the adoption chasm, right? It was
Oh,
this
yeah, yeah. You're talking about. Okay, so
PDF
yeah.
sheet or presentation sheet that they would show us with the robotics,
Sure.
the adoption curve.
Yep.
And I'll never forget that, how like at the very beginning, no matter what product it is, but there's something new to the marketplace, and you're sure that it's going to work. That the first people are the cowboys, the people who
Innovators.
are excited to try something new. Like
Yep.
they live, it's something inside of them that they're really excited, and they're the ones who really help get something off the ground so that you can work through the kinks of it. Right? They understand that this might not work correctly, or like this is version 1 and 2.0 or 3.0, and then we're going to get to that point, and they're going to give you feedback, and they're excited to be a part of something new. And then that number of people starts to really open up. And obviously over time, then it becomes a lot easier to have these conversations. Plus you have the evidence to provide and all these different things. Then you get to the point where now you have competitors, because it's so proven that other people are coming to the market with what you provide, and there's just a different option. And all that does is prove that your product is a solution. Now you just have to prove it against theirs. It's no longer saying, should I do this or not do this at all? um, which has always been a really exciting thing to know that, especially now, for me at least, 15 years in the industry, um, what's being utilized today that I sold at one point was not being utilized at all, or was being laughed at. So I say all that to say, you just said at some point, total knee replacement is just going to be a thing of the past and rarely done. I believe that. I mean, why not? Plus, with all the technology that there is today, right? So you got robotics, and then you have these prosthetic devices that are really wild. You have 3D printing, and then you have 3D printing of like metals and biologics, and you have obviously the implementation of AI and genetics, right? So where can you source these different types of products, materials, and ideas to then help the patient? But here's one thing I do know, and I'm going on a rant here. Um, the last thing that any doctor or surgeon wants to do is remove the patient's original tissue and replace it with something. They only do it if they have to. And sometimes that's the safest bet, to just remove it and replace it with some sort of implant. But if you can remove that idea and have that patient regrow, or support it and scaffold it in some way where you don't need to remove, I mean, that's the goal, right? All you're doing is let the body heal itself. You're just supporting the healing process.
Yeah, I think I've been having a lot of conversations with some really, really innovative thinkers in that regard,
Mm.
where the process is what if we can stop or almost mitigate cartilage loss altogether, where
Wow.
we are not having to do that, or at least minimize the the process, the breakdown. I guess if you want to think of it as an analogy of thinking like, hey, what if I could take your tire and then when it gets worn down at a certain spot, I could just put more rubber back on there and just lay a new rubber piece on there. What if your body could actually do that, right? Or the underlying foundation of, let's say, bone, where bone needs blood and you need specific nutrients in order to keep the bone healthy, and the cartilage needs to be healthy because we know cartilage doesn't really have a blood source in order to help it. But how did we get cartilage there to begin with if it didn't have a source? So like the bone supplies that source where you need cartilage. It's like the soil. Like if you can keep the bone healthy, does that keep the cartilage healthy? And so there's surgeons thinking about this as far as getting this supply of nutrients in order to keep the cartilage. And we're getting into this level with AI of individualized medicine where your body chemistry and my body chemistry have such significant markers. What if we could take and look at those markers where we could actually help our bodies heal ourselves because we could
Mm.
identify our particular characteristics that we need of where we are deficient and whatever, like however our diet is deficient. And if we could solve some of those issues through
Right.
AI, through blood work and some of that, could we get to a point where we actually are? I think we need to go and solve the problem instead of giving a band-aid of, doing a total joint.
Yeah.
Surgeons are starting to think like that are like innovators. They're thinking, how can I solve the underlying pre issue, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to solve kind of for ACL. Like most people that get an ACL injury when they're playing sports as a kid and to get a reconstruction, they end up having to get a total joint, unfortunately, because
Yeah.
the ACL, as good as a surgeon is just not as good as what God gave you. It just isn't. And so and there's also underlying issues there where you maybe have a chondral defect that came from that. There's this thought that you get a bone bruise based off of that tear, that the bones are collapsing and creating an issue with your bones. You're already going to develop arthritis there. But what if we could sort of look at that and say, hey, what if we provide some biology to help offset that so that the knee does heal, that you could actually go in? Dude, there's all kinds of things that you can think along from that standpoint. And I think we're getting to the point with technology that yes, potentially we can look at that. Now, are we there? I don't
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
that we're there yet, but we are certainly looking in the right direction. I mean, we're
Right.
getting closer and closer every single year. The Macy procedure that people are doing now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where they actually put a cartilage plug in there and essentially give you, fix your cartilage defect space. And surgeons are actually doing this
Yes.
for potential, uh, patients that have those defects. I mean, there's other doctors that are looking at things like OCD. So, like chondral defects where the bone is like, has this AVN sort of like on X-ray, or sorry, MRI, and going in and actually providing support and structure, decompressing it, putting in struts to help support the bone, and using, BMAC or bone marrow aspirate and all those things in order to help heal that area. Can
Right.
that solve the underlying issue of it degrading even more and creating arthritis? I mean, dude, it's we're at such an exciting time, but also surgeons are some
Yeah.
surgeons are very adamant about, oh, the science is not there. That doesn't make sense. Like they're stuck in their ways until yes, it's proven out. And that is the way that medicine works, right? We have to have good literature, we have to have support, but we also have to have innovative surgeons that are thinking outside the box. They're saying, what if I can do this for my patient and help them heal? That's where medicine really gets interesting and innovative.
That's so true. Yeah, I mean that is the exciting part. Knowing that you're working in this direction with people and you see these conversations and seeing it come together. Because when I got in, cartilage does not regrow. It's like the Earth is flat, right? Like we're the Earth is on a turtle, and this is how we are. And then fast forward, it's like, oh no, we're like, you know, uh, things. It's exciting to see things change. However, it doesn't change rapidly at all, and it feels like it's barely moving. But you have to look back a few years in the past and see that progress.
Yep.
Every little conversation, every little meeting or that you put together and have a conversation with a few docs here and there, every paper that comes out one at a time, just start like slowly pushes it. It's like watching like the shadow of the sun. It's like you don't see it moving, but you look away and you eventually look back and adjust. um that is the exciting part.
A quick heads up, if you're getting value from this and you want more, check out medsalesblueprint.com. That's my website where I help people get into medical sales. I have tons of resources and tons of content. So whether you want to get in or you want to help someone get in, send them my way. Back to the video.
That's badass, man.
Yeah.
It's exciting but frustrating, I bet.
It's extremely frustrating because I want to have these in-depth conversations, but the doctors don't have time to have these in-depth conversations. So I try to have
Yeah.
conversations with them quickly, but also say, you know what, I need you to reach out to your colleagues that are seeing and doing this and have them tell them what they're seeing from a patient standpoint. With you see data points when data is coming out, right? It takes a while for data to be published, but some of the surgeons that are doing this they already know what the data is, and they're like, "Hey, I see this. The data is not
Yeah.
published yet, but this is what our findings are." And sometimes you can get those surgeons to have conversations around what they're actually seeing in the real world versus what data says. There's this big sort of misunderstanding about research and actual real world practice, right? Where research looks at, okay, let's take these points and this point and that point, and let's put
Yeah.
all of this and let's try to keep as many variables out of it as possible. Well, a lot of times, I hate to say this, but some of the research that's being done is not being done, I guess, with the most integrity. If it's supported by companies per se,
Mm.
you have to like be very careful
Oh
about
yeah.
that, instead of looking at, let's say, potential like registry data where the surgeons are, it's multiple different places versus
Yeah.
just a single site, right? A single
Yeah.
site can be, are the surgeons really good surgeons and that's why they're having good outcomes, or the surgeons maybe not the best surgeons? Not to say that surgeons aren't good, but maybe that it really the
Yes.
biggest thing is it depends, right? If
Yeah.
you can take registry data, Australia, some of those places that do registry data, they get some really, really good data because they're pulling it from a bunch of different institutions and looking at all the data. And that gives you a better sense of what it really entails, and trying
Yes.
to look from that direction versus just a single site of we did 10 patients. You got to have a good, I guess that I don't know what I can't remember the actual terminology, but you need to have a good basis number of people in order for it to make a true numerical difference. Hard to read through some of that with the data. Surgeons are really good at it after they've been through enough training and everything else. Us as sales rep, it's harder because you could look at a paper and you'd be like, "Oh, this is the conclusion they came to," and but then you have to look deeper into
Yes.
what does that data really look like. That's very, very difficult to actually do, and sometimes even the conclusions, like the surgeons are like, "Oh, well, here's the issue. Like, the data says the issue." I'm like, hold on a second. Look deeper into the data because you're missing what some of the data is actually pointing out. And sometimes you have to look even deeper into it because sometimes the surgeons don't even recognize it. Uh,
Yeah.
and that's a very challenging thing to have, where surgeons will come back at you where they may say, "Oh, well, the data, it says that the data is bad and all this stuff." I'm like, hold on a second, did you read the paper or did you just look at the conclusion of like all of this thing versus, hey, let's look at these specific data points and what you're saying, here's potentially the reason that some of those data points came out. Hey,
Right.
maybe like one particular surgeon in that group didn't do as well as the other surgeons, and all of theirs were the ones that failed, and all the other surgeons didn't fail. Or,
Yeah.
it's, man, I'm still, even after
Interesting.
being in the industry for so long, still trying to figure out exactly how to look at data in a very meaningful way.
That's that. Yeah. So I had to live that life for 3 years when I was with Biocomposites, and we were growing, but not nearly the size of the company that it is today. Like the smallest booth you can get at AOS, like stuff like that. And that whole dynamic, like, yeah, the summary is obviously a summary of a massive amount of information and data, and then everybody who writes their conclusion of a paper is incredibly cautious to not make any jumps to saying anything definitive. So if there's anything cautious that they have to mention, they will. So if somebody's just reading the summary and it says, well, there's not enough data, or there was something noticeable that puts it into question, like they're saying that because of they don't want to be caught and ruining their reputation supporting something that eventually ends up to become something that isn't, or whatever it might be. The dynamic of providing papers was one of the most interesting things for me, where okay, you got this study and the company's excited because we finally got a study. Like, and it's not a white paper, it's peer reviewed. Okay, and then you bring it to a surgeon, he's like, peer reviewed from where? And it's like, this magazine. I never heard of it. Who's on the board? Who's on the panel of that magazine, or the who published the article and who's on the board there? I'm like, okay. He's like, what level study is it? And it's level 1, 2, 3, 4, right? What's the cohort? What's the size of the cohort, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, what's a significant size? And yes, it is a shame that here in the U.S., the patients that they get in is from a small group of surgeons, or one surgeon, or whatever it is, that can only get so many patients, and those patients have to consent, right? And so it's going to take months and months and years just to get 250. It's like, whoa, we got 250. And in reality, we've got millions of people over the last how many years who had this procedure, but we can't share patient information. So you have to look to other countries that allow some form of patient information sharing so that there can be large cohorts. I was having this conversation the other day with someone about how insane it is. And it's just a fact of the matter, unfortunately, that you want to keep patients' information private, but it also prevents the forwarding of healthcare, because you can't have a large national database to say, cartilage regrowth in this certain procedure, XYZ, what ends up happening? Well, I mean, we got hundreds of thousands of people doing it, but we don't know because no one's amalgamating that data and turning into analytics that we can review, which would be a game changer, but we can't.
Yeah. I wonder if the future we could potentially do it if we could get AI to remove all the patient identifiers. And the problem I think we would run into is, will patients consent to it or believe that it's actually true that all the patient identification stuff is removed?
Right. Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest hurdle is, can it be done, and are people willing to allow the opportunity for it to be done?
Yes.
I guess a whole different topic to get down that a rabbit hole of trying to
Oh,
protect patient information for sure.
it makes total sense to me, because to your earlier point, and I'll say it, human nature, when someone is incentivized one way or another to maybe have a certain outcome, like it's better if this outcome shows up, let's just say maybe they'll just see things differently, or maybe they'll position things differently, right? Let's remove the fact that there might be some bad people in the world that completely change things, right? And I've never seen or heard of that. But um, when you have a limited amount of people and a limited amount of patients, things can get called into question because there isn't a large data set with a whole bunch of different people doing the same procedure. So I get that. And I remember there was a few, I don't know what you would want to call it, but before you get into a conversation with a doctor about a paper, I remember there was a couple of questions that I would ask before I present the paper to be sure I wanted to present it and present it in a certain way. And one was, hey, like, do you respect Dr. So, or do you know Dr. So-and-so, or are you familiar with the University of, right? And you judge their reaction, because maybe they don't believe in Dr. So-and-so over there. Maybe they had a bad, uh, they don't believe in the way they do their work, or they're different schools of thought, whatever it may be. So, because I have been in a situation where I've presented something and it's like they get so turned off because so-and-so is supporting that. And they're like, this is the doctor that supported that thing. Did you know that? And I'm like, no, my company put this in my hand. I read it, seemed great, but I don't know the history like you do. So you just want to be cautious of these things. But again, one of the, just the dynamics of
Yeah.
bouncing
Sometimes
around
you
in medical sales.
sometimes you put your foot in your mouth, right? You just don't realize it until after the fact of, oh, maybe I should not have mentioned Dr. So and so in regards
Yeah.
to any kind of conversation. Yeah.
Where you go up to a orthopedic foot and ankle trained surgeon and you show them something by a DPM.
Yeah, may not go over so well.
I never did that.
Yeah, I mean, you make mistakes and you learn from them.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many. We could have a whole just 4-hour discussion on mistakes that we made all the time. I'm still making mistakes and still learning every day. So
Yeah. I got a couple questions here. Oh, but what I definitely do want to ask you is, what was your inspiration around the way that you provide knowledge around conduct in the operating room, conduct in hospitals?
ooh, that's kind of an emotional subject. Um, so I have been fortunate enough to be had the opportunity to go to an education seminar called Content Crib, which is a group of med tech professionals and surgeons that get in a room and basically discuss uh, digital thought leadership and how we disseminate information from a digital standpoint, as well as educating the public because uh, video media is rapidly becoming the premier way of education, right? Publications, people don't want to read papers, they want to watch videos or they want to hear podcasts.
Yeah.
We're getting in more and more into a digital society, right? One of the reasons that we're doing this exact podcast talking about specific things because people are willing to listen to people talk versus just reading a paper. Sometimes it's just easier to digest. It's actually more entertaining.
Mhm.
So that was a side note. Sorry. So I was able
Very
to
good.
go to Content Crib and become educated on how to better sort of uh, digitize some my thoughts and information around that. And I actually was sort of inspired by the fact that I have a long-standing history of being in the OR and have been around a lot of good reps and also a lot of bad reps and wanted to share my experience with people about how to better conduct themselves in the OR. And so I started talking to some surgeons. I did some videos with some surgeons. Um, and kind of came about it that way just from also sort of this overwhelming sort of nudge, I guess, from God to sort of say, hey, you should share like your experiences and what you think people should do in order to be better in the OR. And I don't know that all of the information that I'm sharing resonates or is the best possible information. There are other people that, quite frankly, when I read their stuff, I'm like, man, that's fantastic, right? But where
Yeah.
mine comes from, I want to help people be the best version of themselves in the OR and be respectable in the OR and also like help them limit being making mistakes in the OR of how they conduct themselves professionally is a reflection of like your character going forward and how you build good relationships with the surgeons. And I feel as though that I've been able to do that over a long-standing career of being able to be in the OR with surgeons and trying to be respectful of that I'm a guest in that OR and that I need to make sure that I am on my best behavior for supporting the staff, the surgeon, and ultimately for the patient and for them to have the best possible outcome.
Yes.
And if I was laying on that operating table, and I know because I'm in the industry that there's a rep in there that's helping support, I would not want a rep in there that was goofing off or not paying attention or not doing everything that they can for their surgeon and the staff that's in that room in order to have the best possible outcome. So I started thinking about how, my experiences and then drawing on, discussions with doctors and other people about their experiences and sort of kind of putting information out there just from a share standpoint of
Yeah.
how I could potentially be a better representative in the OR as a support person, resource, servant inside the OR space for ultimately the patient that is having an operation. Because at the end of the day, they're the most important person in that room and trying to do the best that you can for them to have their best possible outcome.
Yeah. I love it. From the moment I saw it, I was like, this is great. Um, because to me it screams, here's what I know, and it would only benefit there's going to be some people that come across this and it's going to benefit them. Like it's less about some sort of brand or some goal that you might have. It's just pure guidance, pure um, here's my years of information, and I've probably seen, I imagine you've seen it done the wrong way, or you've heard some bad things, or whatever it is, or even when you were younger, earlier in your career, and then you learn some things just by being a part of it and then sharing, um, and it's consumable in your LinkedIn posts. Is there anywhere else that you're posting it right now, or is it just on LinkedIn?
No, just on LinkedIn right now. That's probably
One of
the
the coolest
easiest.
things. Sorry, what were you say?
So that's probably the easiest access,
Yeah.
I guess, for me to allow people if they want to consume it from a professional standpoint. I think LinkedIn, I think is, and
Yes.
there I may be wrong. It's the most, I guess, regarded professional sort of platform for people. Like that's where most of my connection of people is in the space. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't really have really any other professional platform that I can think of that would be, you know, at a
Same.
higher, yeah.
No, and that makes total sense. I think a lot of the healthcare space, med tech, med sales, gathers in LinkedIn, right? Because there's not too many other places to go. There's so much going on in our industry, and everyone's very busy. To think that you're going to join some community and just be a part of it and spend time on it is a difficult task. Even for me to try, and the concept around working with people who are trying to get in makes sense to me because they need a place to go,
Yeah.
right? But once you're in the industry, there's been a lot of conversations that I've had around like, how do you create a community for people in the industry? Like they're busy, so LinkedIn is the place to be, and your content that you have shared, like I said, it's consumable. It's what's the word? It's bite sized but impactful. Um,
Oh, I
and
appreciate that.
for me, being in the operating room a number of times, I don't get exposed to what other reps are doing very rarely. But thankfully, my senior rep, uh, massive amount of integrity, ethics, and morals, just genuinely great human. And he carried that wherever he went. And he trained me, and the seriousness that he took inside the operating room, obviously you got to take it seriously, but to the next level. Thankfully, I carry that around. And you make me wonder, what is it like being in the OR, uh, fly on the wall watching other reps? I
Yeah,
don't know.
there's uh, I will say for the most part, it's actually very, very good. But there are individuals, and I have been in rooms with individuals where it is not a professional environment in certain regards.
Yeah.
So I think if you can bring that, I think it's more respected from a relationship standpoint and professionalism standpoint if you show up as a professional and try to do the best possible job because I mean, essentially that is your job, right? That's your role is to be a professional and provide the best possible care for the patient, provide the best possible support for the surgeon and the staff.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. You make me think. I wonder if maybe there are some reps that didn't have mentorship and guidance, and all they did was their company module that got them through understanding how to handle sterile space. And that's it, right? And then
There
they just
absolutely
click through it.
100%. I've
That's a scary
seen it
thought,
firsthand.
actually.
Yeah, it can be very difficult to well, sometimes you have to like I've had to step in and say, "Hey, maybe we should like give them some space or let's step out of the room or let's be mindful of
Really?
what you're saying or yeah there's sometimes you get put in situations where for the safety
Good.
of the patient and also just from a moral ethical standpoint you need to step up and say hey you just contaminated that we need to make sure that we remove that item or hey now that's contaminated
Yeah.
that situation because our duty is to the patient.
Yeah. Yeah. Super embarrassing when I rubbed up against a tray once. You never want to do that, but I think if you're in the OR enough times, it might happen to you. and you're just like trying to get by, and it's a trauma case, and you're pulling out trays all over the place, and this one was hanging over, and you're like, what did I just do to this case? It's not about me.
Yeah, it happens, and
It happened, and I'm sorry. Thankfully, like, well, we're probably not going to use that tray anyways. I'm like, huh.
goodness, yeah.
But yeah, no, yeah, please keep doing that. Absolutely. It is I have a list of pages to follow for those who are trying to get into medical sales. I think one of the biggest things that you can do that people don't realize, or they just don't do it because maybe they're embarrassed or don't know where to start, is just start following companies and people in the medical sales space, so that they can be, for a number of things, you can become familiar with it. You can understand what products are out there, because companies and people are just promoting their products. Even surgeons, hey, I just, check out this x-ray, just did this case. You can start getting in touch and communicate with these people. You can get educated, and you start immersing yourself in the industry and figuring out what's there. And if you want to look good to a recruiter or a hiring manager, you start reposting some stuff and commenting on it and show that you're passionate about it. One of the pages is yours because of that, because they can get true education out of looking at your page. There's some, there's a number of pages out there that I noticed that this person is putting out valuable, useful content, not just content to post, but stuff that will help and provide education.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great content out there from people in particular spaces. I really enjoy when people have valuable insights into, I guess, the psychology of, of sales, right? The landscape and education. There's a couple people, I mentioned a couple people. I actually had a post this morning which mentioned quite a few people that are doing things that are really kind of interesting in the medical space, that are helping surgeons get noticed, that are exposing sort of the background of insurance and all of the things that go into that, that have information that they supply for people to help with their products, to get them into facilities, all of these things. There's so much valuable content out there if you look and follow and educate and constantly try to grow and develop yourself. There, people are sharing, willing, and
Yeah.
they're just providing unbelievable information that you should be consuming if you're in this space, right? It evolves every single day, so you should be trying to consume as
Yeah.
much as you can. Yeah.
Yeah, I try and be like, there's nothing better than going on LinkedIn and getting some useful tidbits, even if you're looking for 30 seconds or 60 seconds. But being mindful of the things that I like, so I can get more of that type of content. Please keep messaging me and forwarding me anything that you think that I might find interesting. You've done it once or twice so far. And I think I reposted one of them right away. I was like, this is exactly what we spoke about on the last podcast.
Yeah.
The new attorney general.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's there's the volume of information that's coming at us every single day, and trying to figure out how best to meaningfully consume it, and also to share others, to have conversations on the ideas that are being talked about and developed, and how we move forward. It's You can't build something in a silo. I guess you would say everybody can add valuable input, and trying to see everyone's perspective. I really appreciate to see that, so that I can either one. Sometimes it validates how I feel, and sometimes it actually puts me in my place and tells me that I'm completely incorrect, and I need to reframe my thinking. So yeah, it's a good space to be in.
That's a really good point. Or even assumptions that you might have made and you didn't realize that you were basing all of your knowledge off of an assumption. Sometimes that happens, where you're just like, everything I've been doing is based off of something that I assumed because I keep seeing people do it.
Yeah.
Changing gears real quick before we jump off. I know I'm excited for tonight, and thank you for inviting me. Do I bring anything? Should I bring like a dish of food or something?
You don't need to bring food. We're having dinner.
All right, cool.
Food's gonna be there.
All right, nice. Yeah. I don't want to come empty-handed.
To the restaurant?
I thought it was at like
to the restaurant. I'm like, hey, and that's what the restaurant.
Who the fuck is this guy? Yeah. I thought it was at a brewery. I thought it
No,
was
no, no, no. This is the dude. You're gonna love this place. You've never been here?
no.
Oh yeah, this is great. They have like farm to table type stuff. Great chef. They have unbelievable bourbon bar stuff. Everything. Yeah,
Oh hell yeah.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Deal. If you had to hire a brand new rep today, what would you look for in them, in their resume, in their presence, their approach?
I think that is a very deep question. So let's start from here. I think from the standpoint of first and foremost is I would probably try to flesh out their underlying desire and reasons for being in the industry, and whether it comes from a altruistic state or it comes from a financial state. And the reason I say that is because, unfortunately, I think a lot of people get into the business from like, oh, I'm going to go make a lot of money. When really and truly, if you want to make a difference and you're actually going to be really good, it's to change the way that we help patients in whatever aspect that is. And so to say, oh, I just want to make a bunch of money, yeah, that can be done in the industry, but
Yes.
can it be done in a very or in a basis for of integrity and making sure that you're doing what's right by the patient and the doctor. You could try to sell a product to a doctor that's not good for the patient, and there are unfortunately people that do that. Or you can say, ultimately, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing? What is my purpose, and how do I best represent that purpose in the betterment of patient care? And almost saying, I myself, as a representative, have taken the Hippocratic Oath to first do no harm. And if I do that and keep the patient as the penultimate uh, goal of taking care of their health, I think the money will follow from you being able to provide a service or product that is supporting the surgeon for the betterment of the patient. So I guess that's a long way to saying, like, trying to figure out, does this person have integrity,
Yeah.
and are they putting the patient and their safety and their well-being as the number one key component for them in their hierarchy of morals?
Right.
That would be my biggest, my number one, right? Secondly, I would say is, are they willing to learn? And because this industry changed so fast, if you can't learn, or you're unwilling to sort of try to learn or grasp concepts, yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to sort of continue to grow and develop in the fast changing areas of medicine. And you're going to have to navigate the scenario of landscapes that you're probably that are way deeper than just what you would see on an everyday basis from a job, right? You're having to
Yeah.
navigate a business case landscape, a clinical landscape, a psychological landscape with the staff and surgeons. All of these different tools that you have to be able to sort of bring all together. You have to be at least proficient in all of those, and you need to be able to learn how to be proficient in those. You don't have to be the best, right? There are people that have specific skills that work in a company that are really, really good at the commercial side of things, and how do we position product stuff. And there are people that are really good in the relationship side of things with the surgeons, and keeping great relationships. And then there's also the business case of the financial side of things, of what does this make sense financially, and how does it work in the hospital, or vice versa. So I think being able to really learn and navigate those will be the secondary thing. And in the third thing, probably from me, from an orthopedic standpoint, because that's kind of my space, is understanding the human body, biomechanics, and sort of mechanical structures seems to help you understand the basics m- of orthopedics in general. Orthopedics is similar to, I hate to make this analogy, but sort of like building a house. Like, you got to have strong principles of support and stability and all of those
Yeah.
things. And I think having that basic understanding of kind of how things go together and how to put things back together, I think from an orthopedic standpoint, gives you some help. So, that's
Yes.
not, it's not an end all be all, but if you don't really understand mechanics and how that works, it's going to be very, very challenging for you to grasp concepts that are, the basic building blocks of, well, why should we not use, a stem that has looks like a axe down into a femur, because you're going to split the femur, versus like, how do we, keep from doing that? Understanding the
Yeah.
mechanics in that way,
Forces. Yep.
yeah, the forces, understanding some of those, that would be sort of like the third level of kind of understanding for orthopedics. And I guess, also you have to have this a sales mentality of being able to have difficult conversations and be willing to have difficult conversations, and patience in general, because things are not going to happen overnight. And I honestly, I struggle, I think, more with the sales side of things, with the psychology of sales, than any of the other things. I still um, find that to be my weakest, because a lot of times I feel sometimes like I'm burdening the surgeon with trying to have conversations, and sometimes
Yeah.
you have to figure out, like you said, the imposter syndrome of, this is my role, I need to have these conversations, and sometimes you have the courage, and sometimes you're like, now's not the right time. I'm
Yeah.
not going to walk up to a surgeon while they're scrubbing in for their case, because that's just not the right time for me to have a conversation when they're about to go to do a procedure. So having those kind of understanding, that's part of the code of conduct of, hey, this is not probably not, knowing the time and place when I have
Yeah.
conversations, and sort of having navigating that.
Yeah. The scrub sink conversation always baffled me. Uh, I got used to it in the sense of like catching the vibe. Is this guy getting game ready for his surgery? I'm not going to bother him. Then there's the guys who are washing up and he's having a chat and a conversation. Oh, he's ready to talk. Then I'll have a conversation with him, a 2-minute scrub sync combo, that companies teach you. But I totally get it, because one thing that you don't, that the one thing that you do is that you keep your eye focused on the actual intent of why we're doing any of this. And that is to help the patient, which can get lost, and it gets lost all the time because there's so many things going on. Look at our healthcare industry, where you get hurt, you go to see a doc, you might see him for 3 minutes, and you've already seen a whole bunch of people and they're just reading a paper. Oh, you got this? All right, take this, and take two and call me in a month or whatever. You kind of get lost. And I got to be a good sales rep. I got to get these trays over here. I got to do all these different things. But you never lose focus of the exact intent of what is going on, what we're trying to do, and it's help patients, or it's help our customers help patients. We need to be the best support possible for them so that they can provide the best support. They're only as good as, the tools and the people around them in the hospital, in the room, and all the everything that they have to provide that support, right? For example, when a family member gets hurt or something like that and they want to go see a doctor, but it's also like, what hospital, can provide that care as well, because there's a lot that goes in. So to summarize what you said, number one is to discover their desire, right? What is their intention? What are they looking to do? Two is learning about navigating the business is how I would summarize what you said,
Yeah,
the different
very well put.
complexities of it. And then you have the biomechanical structures, which is huge. And thankfully, when it came to becoming an orthopedic trauma rep, that was a massive necessity. And thankfully, my mind worked in that way to a degree, right? Where you're essentially working with these, some of them are like amazing carpenters, right? The way they see, the screw should go in this trajectory based on their anatomy. And then don't forget the soft tissues and the
Yeah, the
vein might be in the way,
three-dimensional
whatever.
understanding of the body is
Right.
as just it's absolute necessity.
Yeah. With 2D X-ray and then an obese patient where you have all the stuff
Where
to
the
get through.
landmarks are, yeah, you're navigating. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so we would ask specific questions in interviews about, like, did you play Legos growing up? When you buy something, you have to put it together. Do you look at the directions, or do you just go right after it? Like, tell me, and you start to, as they explain, you start to get where their mind goes. I was like, no, I'll hire someone to put my TV up on the wall.
Oh, yeah, that you may not last long when you have to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe orthopedic trauma is not for you.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. How would you describe that if you get a direction set? Because I actually had this yesterday. If you get something to look at all the directions, do you like, oh, kind of figure it out from a standpoint of like, oh, I think this kind of go like that, and then
Yeah.
how do you approach that?
For me, I've always been like a mix of both. Like I try and look at it and see if I can. I just want to know if I can figure it out myself. And then I look at the instructions because you can't unscrew. You can take a screw out of a hole, but now that hole is compromised, and a lot of it is because of what I've learned. Right. So when we would ask that question at my old at branch, it would be like the people who dive right into it are the trauma guys, the guys who open up the instructions and read through the instructions first. Those are the joint replacement guys because they're more procedural, step by step. And that's just a general thought. It theoretically makes sense. So I would say I'm a mix of both because you'd be making a mistake. What about you?
I would say the same thing. I try to get a general overview of what it looks like
Yeah.
and sort of look and say, okay, I think these pieces go together. Let me kind of
Mhm.
organize them this way. And
Yeah.
then let me look at the instructions to see, like, okay, what's the correct orientation that they're asking me to put that together, and kind of go step by step, and then kind of figure it out from that standpoint, and do a little sometimes trial and error as well. Where
Yeah.
I know, like, hey, this is not going to be, it's not going to cost me anything, but I'm like, oh, I think that this goes with this and this goes with this, and kind of put those kind of in organized pieces and kind of do
Yeah.
it that way. And then, kind of verify from the instructions.
Yeah.
I'm a very mechanical or kinesthetic learner in general, right? So I like to learn by doing versus I can learn by reading or learn by seeing, but doing for me is the absolute best way that I learn in general.
It sticks when you do it. Yeah. Yeah. So I'll look at even the tools that they provide you with. I'm like, are these tools, these free tools good enough, or should I just go and grab
Yeah.
mine? What size is this? Right. And what was the other piece? Oh, and then there might be like two rods that look exactly the same, but in reality, that one
Yeah.
has an extra screw hole because that's the one on the left that has the drawers on this desk, and the other one doesn't. Right.
Yeah.
So
You look for the small details that make it a different to say, okay, let me make sure that I get this oriented with what the instructions say for this particular side. So
exactly.
yeah, you're a little bit of procedural, but also a little bit of like, I guess, have you read the book called like, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow?
No.
It's a very interesting book about level one thinking and level two thinking. Whereas
Mm.
level one is quick and you can make quick decisions and you're kind of automatic. And level two thinking is where it's a little bit more difficult and arduous, and you have to sort of think through the scenario in order to get to the solution. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
processes in life that are just level one thinking that we deal with, and we don't tend to spend a lot of energy on level one. And sometimes we make mistakes because we think it's a level one when it actually is a level two that we should be spending more time on. It's actually kind of an interesting thought process where if you're going into deeper thoughts, how should we sort of break it down into functional pieces to where we can
Really?
understand it? And our brain sort of works autonomously, that the better we get at something, it goes more into level one, kind of like learning a sport where you learn and you
Yeah.
autonomously do it, right? You start with what is I guess the step is incompetent and conscious, and then you go to like basically competent, all the way to competent
Yeah.
unconscious,
Co-
right? There's that
Yes.
that progression, and that's
Yes.
kind of level one thinking is competent unconscious, where you're in a flow state type situation. So I think our brains, after being in the industry for so long, like I could step into an OR for a joint case and I pretty much know exactly what's going to happen, but it could be some nuance or whatever that could throw me for a loop if I'm not paying enough attention to
Yeah.
specific things where I need to go through procedure, like look at every item that needs to be on the table and in the order. And scrubs techs do this a
Yes.
lot too, where they like, oh, I set everything up. And then you go look and you're like, hold on a second. You actually missed like, where's your batteries for your power? And they're like, huh? So it's simple things, but make a big difference, right? Of like, oh, we're waiting on batteries. The surgeon's like ready for the saw, but they never got batteries to actually start the cutting procedure, right? And it's
Yes.
just, but that adds to the case versus like having secondary checks and
Oh yeah.
we doing procedurals, but also looking and sort of like quickly checking things. Interesting perspectives to think about that,
It's
right? From a
true.
deeper level.
No, I have to listen to that book. I'm glad you brought that up. It's almost like it was meant to be, because I'm doing a lot of thinking and when building out the company, right? So a lot of the information comes easy, but also like the structuring of the business, I have to really think through, like when potential customer clicks this, they're going to now visualize these things. Um, you can hire someone to do that, but no one sees it like you do. So I'll literally sit there or have a conversation with ChatGPT or draw it out, right? That gets easier. But understanding the way you think, because you can overlook things, or sometimes I just overanalyze things as well. So I wouldn't mind having some structure to understanding the way I think, so that when I do think, I'm more effective at it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's also somebody said to me level 3 thinking is like even beyond, which would be what is the long-term impact and effect that this would have on the future or outcomes, will be an even deeper level of not just thinking the complexities of level 2, but thinking it and even further. So it's like it kind of compounds itself even further beyond just level 1, level 2 to level 3, where we
Right.
could be getting into deeper philosophical long-term effects, some of those
The impacts of
deeper,
certain
deeper.
things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
I have
I'm
conversations.
sold.
Yeah,
Sold.
well, I have conversations with my brother-in-law who is a doctor of philosophy,
Uh,
and I don't feel even worthy to sit at the table to have a conversation with him because he thinks at such a deep level about specific things that when we do have conversations, I think that we're getting deep. And for him, it's probably still only like surface level of the deepness that he's
right.
gone into thinking about certain things. And he is an amazing, amazing dude. And he teaches ethics at the Naval Academy. And he's teaching these young people who are, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, how to
Mhm.
think through going into war and making a decision on allowing someone to live or to die, and the
Mhm.
moral reasoning behind those things and obeying commands, all of these things that you have to think about. And they're young adults and making life altering decisions in the field of battle and all the things that go on. And he's
Wow.
trying to instill in them the ethical moral compass that needs to be their guiding light for them when they go and experience these things, and how to also rationalize that sometimes the moral ethical thing to do was to take a life in order to prevent them taking other lives. And so it's a
Right.
big deal. And it's an unbelievable honor that he gets to provide them, and I'm just absolutely in awe of what he gets to do for them.
Yeah, really. He's having open discussions with them.
Yeah, I mean, this is he teaches them, like, part of their curriculum is understanding topics such as moral injury, and what we just described about taking a life versus letting someone live, and being and living with that, right, from a war standpoint, and
Yeah.
having those deep level discussions and trying to ingrain that into them at such a young age. It's pretty
Right.
interesting and fascinating stuff.
I love that. I was just thinking yesterday, I was watching a movie with a couple of friends, and we can so quickly become desensitized. Movies are throwing like these insanely incredible situations on the screen, and this actor has to act like they're making this incredible decision, and then you're just sitting there like eating your like delivery Uber Eats, and you're just like, oh, like, and somebody just gets shot in the head in the movie, and you're just like, whatever. But in reality, you can take a step back and just like, when a movie really hits, it's like it really makes you sit there and think, even after the movie, like what a situation that you have been put in. I've never had open discussions like that to that depth, and to have that with the youth, I guess you could say, to allow them to really think that these things through. I mean, that's progression of I would go as far as to say society, to be able to have these um, theoretical, ethical, moral like dilemmas thrown right in front of you, where you have to make a decision right on the spot. Um, yeah, no, that's pretty damn incredible. And you know, to a lesser degree, you can kind of see that in I mean, our space is a sterile space. It's an organized space. It's not the ER, right? It's
But we need to be trained in that way too, of our moral direction needs to be for the betterment and the best possible outcome for the patient. And are we trained that way in general? Unless you have a good mentor that trained you that way, or you have a moral compass that's already pointing that direction, I don't know what the right answer is for a lot of reps out there. Like, that's, I guess, part of the reason I was trying to help give that direction for people to say, are we and can we do the best for the patient and be of high moral integrity for the best outcome for patients?
yeah. I got one for you. You show up to a surgery, you see that you do not have your full inventory of implants. You're missing a couple sizes. How do you handle that?
Go straight to the surgeon and tell the surgeon, hey, the inventory is not here. Let me see if I can work this out before we take the patient back or whatever the case may be. But you go directly and have a conversation with the surgeon right then and there. You
Right.
take full, you take full responsibility. If it's your responsibility and you're supposed to have the stuff there and it's not there and you were supposed to check it, you have to take responsibility. And that's part of being a good rep is have you done your checks to make sure done, double check, triple check, whatever,
Yeah.
that you have
Expiration
your
dates.
inventory right.
Yeah.
And so there are extenuating circumstances. And if you're in the business long enough, you will get to a point where there are things that you don't have, and you have to have conversations with a doctor and say, hey, this is not currently here. I am working to see if I can get it here. And if I can't get it here, what do you want to do? Do you want to move forward? Do you not want to move forward
Right.
and take the full ownership and responsibility and let them make the decision? Because they may say, you know what? I don't necessarily need that. I think we're going to be here, and they can make the ultimate decision versus you not telling them and then getting to a situation where it's not there. You never want to do that. That is just, you just don't do that. Right.
Yep.
So I've
Open the
had to have
patient up and
conversations.
yep.
Yeah, you have to have conversations with a surgeon. And at the end of the day, if you lose the business for the surgeon, but you did the right and responsible thing, you'll be able to sleep at night. And if the surgeon can't respect that, you may not want to be working with them potentially in general. Like, I think most surgeons will respect the fact that you're coming to them and telling them, hey, this is not here, and giving them the opportunity beforehand before they go into an arena of the theater, of the OR, to do the work that they're and anticipating that everything is there that needs to be there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because some people might think, oh, well, he's going to call my competitor so that they have their products ready and all this stuff, and you're just thinking about sales.
Yeah.
Your reputation, fuck, he's going to think that I'm irresponsible, and how am I going to tell my senior manager that I lost the case? What all these, what's
worry
best for
about
the
that.
patient, right?
Yeah.
And if you believe in a higher power, just hope that by doing the right thing, you're going to get rewarded for it. And people will see that.
Yeah.
And you'll be all
Even if
right.
you lose the case to a competitor, you've done right by the patient. Like, you've done the right thing for the patient. And I've had times where I've told the surgeon,
There's
you
reward in that.
probably need to use the competitor. You need to
Yes.
use this for this patient. I don't want you to use my product because it's not the best for the patient. I'd be much happier if you used a competitor's product if it's the best possible outcome for the patient.
Yes. In reality, they'll remember that. They remember that you said that this is the
100%.
person that we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
So to all doctors out there, recognize your reps who understand the bigger picture versus those who don't.
Yeah.
Keep them in mind.
For sure.
Guidance and mentorship in getting into medical sales. Is it something that people should utilize in coming prepared, in seeking a job and going prepared to your interviews? Having an understanding of what you're getting yourself into is crucial. That's one of the number one things I would look for. Does this person know what they're going to do? With that said, would you find it valuable if someone took some sort of a course or had some sort of mentorship and guidance prior to their interviews or even applying for the role?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think if you could better understand the role that you are wanting or the direction that you want to be, and understand your personality and how that fits in and what direction you want to go, it's going to help you make a better decision versus just trying to, like, enter any direction that you potentially can from a medical sales standpoint. Now, I will say this: sometimes you're trying to get in to break in the industry, and so you're willing to take a role that's probably not the best role for you at that particular time, but
Huh.
can give you some skill sets to allow you to get to the direction that you want to go. But I think you definitely need some guidance on how to best position yourself as far as what the mindset should be, what the expectations should be, how you should conduct yourself, not only just like not in the just in the interview, but how you should conduct yourself um, as you're starting that job and what to expect from a conduct standpoint as well. All of those
Yeah.
things should be considered, right? And then it would provide you a better opportunity to make the best possible impression to get yourself into that particular role if you're going into an interview, and understanding how you should position your resume, how skill sets that may line up appropriately for that role that you might have had that they weren't medical sales, not a medical sales job, but a different job where some of those skill sets are actually valuable of being on time,
Yeah.
having being organized, having a routine, understanding like your time frame, managing your time appropriately, and understanding business cases. Some of those things you might have learned or have potential uh, skill sets that are applicable to specific medical sales roles. And I think a lot of people may not realize that those things actually make a huge difference. Of hey, if you're on time and you show up and you're going to be dependable, and all of those soft skills actually
Yes.
are really good skills to have for this particular type of industry. If
Yes.
you know that you are all the time late, and that you are disorganized, and that there's things that you forget or lose, you need to understand that that's not how this business works. So I
Hmm.
think it absolutely does make sense to sort of vet out what are your strengths generally as an individual, and how does that align to the particular positions that you're looking to get into?
100%. Because a part of my job, if someone comes to me, is to guide them in the right direction. And I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't say, hey, look, this role isn't for you, right? In fact, maybe you should go to a sales role in another industry first.
Yeah.
It's very rare that I do that because I have been able to uncover other healthcare types of sales that are not as intensive. And that can be a nice flow into the industry if you still want to get in.
Yeah.
Um, but what I've kind of broken it down to for the most part is finding a role, four things: finding a role that this person's going to enjoy. They're going to have some sort of fulfillment while they're in that role. Two, the company is excited to have them. So, and that goes right along with their value. So the company sees their value, like we're excited to have this person because they bring this value to us, right? Based on their history, their past, their soft skills, maybe some certifications that they have, hard skills. And then expectations. So maybe there's like almost no expectations other than work hard, show up, drive trays around, right? Or maybe there are some expectations on the sales side and or whatever it may be. The expectations that are on you match what you're capable of, right? And so having those mentorship discussions, I'm trying to uncover these things to go, all right, you're going to be great at that. You're not ready for that. Like you need to go here's where you need to look at. And then lastly is to be challenged and grow.
Yeah.
That's a part of the enjoyment part, but to know that you're going to be challenged while you're in it to get better, see what you're worth, and you can grow either in the industry, in the company, or as a person while you're in it. Then you can finally find something that, you're meant for. Both the company's happy and you're happy.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You have to lay it out. That's a beautiful way to lay it the way that you've laid it out. All of those boxes need to be checked, right, in order for it to make sense for a role. You can have two or three out of the four, but if
Yeah.
you're missing, one of those pieces of puzzle, you might be able to get by for a while, but it's become one, then you may not find purpose, or you might be, hey, this is like, it's just too overwhelming. I can't like
Yeah.
figure this out. Or, hey, I'm not growing. There's opportunities to like move beyond the growth where you could go to a different company type situation. But if you get into a position that you're just stuck and there's no growth opportunity, that's not going to really be a challenge for you to continue to learn and grow and develop. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful way to lay it out.
Well, thank you, brother. I am going to jump, so I am not, so I can get there early. Just gracias, amigo. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And tonight we will be introduced to a whole bunch of reps, and
Sweet.
we can have some really great conversations with. This will be awesome to hear. I have an chief executive officer from a company coming, that
Hmm.
you could have some, and he's in a completely different industry in ophthalmology or
Oh, really?
in vision. Yeah. So and some interesting conversations to be had tonight around a lot of different spaces. So it'll be awesome
This can be
kind
cool.
of get everybody in a room and have some conversations. Some great people and just unbelievable sort of insight into the medical space in general.
Cool. Awesome, man. I
Yep.
love that. All right, looking forward to it.
Yep.
All right, well, thanks for setting that up. I will see you in a couple hours.
Thanks for watching. I hope that gave you some real insight. And if you're serious about getting into medical sales or someone you know, send them to me, medsalesblueprint.com. I have tons of resources, tons of content that help people on their way to get into medical sales fast. Phenomenal industry, you know it. People need help getting in, and that's what I'm here for.